Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee, and today is Election Day here in the United States. So, if you haven't voted already, I hope you will go and vote and exercise your given right to have your voice heard. It's such an important thing, and I think we're all going to be very relieved that it is all over here in the U.S. So, what I want to talk about today is how to create a generative AI roadmap. So we've been building up to this. I've talked about how to identify value using the generative AI value flywheel, how to think about strategic planning, identifying the biggest gaps in your business strategy. And last week in my live stream, I talked about how to assess your various capabilities and understand the gaps there. So today we're going to pull it all together into a roadmap. This is the big sort of crescendo and the whole thing coming together. So I'm excited to share with you today how to actually build this roadmap. So what I want to talk about today, let me just get back to my slides here. I just got to get it set up. All right, let's see, push the button. All right, so we're talking about the generative roadmap today. And just before we get started, I do want you to share how you put together your generative AI roadmap. And don't be shy about sharing the messiness of it. I think we could all learn about what has worked for you, what hasn't worked for you. What are your questions that you may have about how to pull together a roadmap, especially when everything is constantly changing. So, what I want to talk about today, first of all, is just how to think about strategy, because I've said this multiple times that oftentimes we think about a list of use cases as a strategy for generative AI, and it's not. It is not aligned to your business goals. And as a result, you're going to always be looking at these individual use cases as individual touch points for creating value. And generative AI is so much bigger, so much more transformative that you really need to be thinking big about how it can impact your strategy, starting small with what is feasible, what you can actually do, especially in a changing landscape, and then scaling as fast as you can across your organization. So, some of the biggest challenges, and I just want to go through these again because this provides a great deal of context about how to actually do this. And so the first thing is that we know that generative AI technologies are moving at such supersonic speeds. I look around and like, oh wait, there's a new version of Claude Sonnet out. We now have Search GPT from OpenAI. It is constantly changing, and those were just things that happened in the past week. So the problem here is that we need a strategy that's very forward-looking and thinking far into the distance, more than just the next quarter or even the next year, and thinking about how to have that strategic transformational impact. And yet at the same time, to be adaptable because of all these different changes. And then, so I call it the 6 quarter walk. So it's 18-month plan. And what this does, it creates a strategic buffer. It is a buffer for all these unexpected developments that may happen. And those unexpected developments could be, again, technology changes. It could be moves on the competitor's part. And it could be even the way that your organization is adapting and changing. Is it going to go as fast as you're anticipating? Is it going to go slower? Could it surprise you and actually go faster than you could have ever imagined? So you want a strategic plan and a roadmap that is going to be flexible enough to take into account all of these uncertainties. And then finally, you want the organization to be able to be proactive and seeing these new opportunities, because as you gain capabilities and skills and knowledge about how to use generative AI, you're going to start seeing all these new opportunities, and you don't want to be so locked in that you can't leverage these new insights that you're getting across your organization. So the roadmap actually anticipates that you're going to be proactive in finding these new opportunities. So I just want to put up a couple other banners. Here is again a link to the slides if you'd like to get them. And I already see some comments in here. Ashita says, this is going to be power packed. There's a lot in here. So I'm glad you're looking forward to this. And Jay has this one tidbit. Our roadmap has been determined by our client needs and matching the right tool sets to be efficient and deliver new insights much faster to client. It is noticed and appreciated. Jay, thank you for saying that. And I think it's very opportunistic again, the way that Jay is talking about this. Yeah, I've known Jay, and we talk a lot offline too as well. That again, the very focused on using and playing with the new technologies, and then being very adaptable again, as he shared there, to meeting the client needs. So, and Jay also says this training for our staff has been a key element, and we will definitely talk about that. So if you have a great staff, then you're able to do many things with them. All right. So I want to go on and just talk about what this roadmap actually looks like. So this is the roadmap. It's a 6 quarter walk. And I started hearing about this when I was working with organizations doing digital transformation. And I was asking one organization, like, how do you do this? It's a very large financial services firm, multinational, multiple business units. And they go, well, we have a digital transformation office, which is really helpful. But they said that we have this 6 quarter walk, and it's an 18-month plan. And everyone across the organization knows what this transformation plan is. And it is 18 months. And at the end of every quarter, they're looking across every work stream, across every division, and saying, where are we? Are we where we expected to be? Are we ahead? Are we behind? And they're reviewing and looking at the landscape and saying, what's changed? And they're going through and adjusting the rest of the 5 quarters with that new knowledge now that they didn't have at the beginning of the first quarter. And then, very importantly, they're adding another quarter. So this is a rolling 18-month plan. And it's taken into account, we know where we want to be far in a distance, but we can really very realistically only plan out about 18 months. And so this again expands beyond existing 12-month budgets. And it also takes into account the reality that it's going to have to change and adjust and be agile. And also that you need to keep extending it. There's no end at exactly 18 months. Now, the caveat here is at some point you will realize we don't need to keep extending it anymore because we'll be done with the plan and the plan will start to shorten. But again, until you see you achieving those strategic goals and you can start to wind down this transformation effort and move it into operational innovation and not be so focused on this big adoption process, you can start thinking about shrinking that 18-month plan. But it really is in the beginning here, thinking about how you're going to continuously roll out a transformation, a strategic transformation that is going to take multiple quarters for you to execute on. So I think this again, we've used this the 18-month plan with multiple organizations, and it just is a very different way of thinking about strategic planning. And I have not seen another model that works nearly as well in terms of expanding the way people think about the strategy planning, but also gives it an execution process and a model to follow too as well. So one of the things I do want to talk about is why it's really different. And again, the strategic depth of this plan is that it is very, very deep integration into the entire organization. So a lot of plans, oftentimes with new technologies, are very department focused. It is a CRM system that's going in for sales, for example, or Workday going in for finance or for HR. So generative AI is very different because it spans across multiple departments because there are synergies and scale issues. It is something that you want to be thinking about from an organizational perspective. There's also flexibility to accommodate all those changes. And again, I really like the fact that you're mitigating the risk and you're taking into account that there's uncertainty and you're building that into your roadmap with these quarterly checkpoints. Every single quarter, you're checking in and you're adapting your plan for the next 5 quarters and adding another quarter. And I'll talk in greater detail about what that quarterly check in looks like and how to run that quarterly process. It's also very staged in terms of the development. It is an understanding that there's a first, second, and third thing that you have to do to build the capabilities and skills to fill those gaps that you may have identified. And then again, we'll talk a little bit about how to do that as a recap of some of the things I talked about last week. And I do love this fact that it is continuous, adoption and adaption. Most strategic planning happens once a year. Oftentimes, it's happening right now in the sort of Q4 season, planning for 2025. And then you're locked into that strategy for the whole year. It's not truly a strategy, it's much more of a budget planning process. And as you get closer and closer to the end of 2025, you have less and less runway to think about how you can be executing that plan. The rolling 18-month, 6-quarter walk is a very different way of thinking about planning, thinking about budgeting, and thinking about execution. So let me just emphasize this again, that again, when I talk to strategic planning departments, they go, this is insane. How can we actually go through and do quarterly reviews of our strategy? And here's the key thing: the strategy itself, the strategic vision of where you want to end up, does not change. That is done in the core work of you deciding these are the big strategic objectives that we have. What's changing is the execution, the planning part of it. So you're thinking very detailed, and it's very realistic because it's taken into account the reality of what you are actually accomplishing and also how the landscape is changing. So I want to go in and talk a bit more about why 18 months versus 12 months. Again, it's a balance between thinking about these foundational projects that you are putting in place versus a 12-month quick fix. Okay, we got 12 months to fix something. 18 months just extends it a little bit further for you to think a little bit more strategically and more long term. We also know that transformations do not happen quickly. We wish we had a magic wand that we could wave and that people would just change. But the reality is, the bigger the change, the harder it is. And it's not simply pushing a button, turning on the technology. We're talking about people, we're talking about culture change. And really, that takes time to train, to get people to use these things, to feel comfortable. To change culture takes time. So you need a longer runway to think realistically, how is that change going to take place? It's also very layered in terms of implementation. And again, having pilots and then scaling them typically takes longer than 12 months. Oh, and I didn't figure, I didn't add, I had another thought, but I moved it to another thing. Just, and then it keeps everyone very focused again on that strategic outcome that you want to have. So I'm just going to check and see if there are any questions here. Okay, we don't have any so far. I'm glad it's all clear. So let me talk a little bit more about how to actually implement this. So let's see, just talked about this. Oh, let's see, that's not right. Here we go. Here's the right slide I want to talk about. So when we're thinking about the 6-quarter walk, there's certain phases to this, and this is very rough. The first one is, again, the first 2 quarters. Again, this is assuming that you're starting very much from scratch. You're laying down the foundations. You're figuring out the core capabilities. Is my data here? Is what are the quick wins we can experiment with to get a better understanding? What is the training that we have to have in place? And then you're putting some of those initiatives outgoing, but you're also thinking, what are the foundational capabilities we need to have in place so that we can do the things in Q3 and Q4, for example, when you're expanding your initiatives and you're refining them. And then Q5 and Q6, you're starting to really think about what are the strategic implications around this. You're optimizing for things. And then you're also making sure that people, again, are aligning. Now, this is a very rough way to think about it, but oftentimes people want everything to happen as quickly as possible. And then I keep going back to think big, start small, scale fast. And the 6-quarter walk, again, roughly lays out how to do this. How do you start with those small pilots, but know that it's going to end up expanding and scaling across the rest of your organization? So a couple of things I want to review quickly is that there are 3 steps that you have to do before you get into this. The first one is understanding how value is created for your organization. And we call this a generative AI value flywheel. So in the beginning, you may be thinking of just efficiency and productivity, finding ways to use generative AI to do operational efficiency and excellence. You may be thinking about ways to enhance your customer engagement and using ways to, let me just make this a little bit easier to see. Let's just hide that for a little bit. Enhancing the customer engagement with, for example, using AI in your customer service or in your marketing to do more personalized messaging. And then there's areas around transformation where these new capabilities and skills allow you to move into new businesses or create highly innovative business models that are going to disrupt and give you a significant competitive advantage or differentiation against your competitors. So, thinking about where the opportunities are very broadly in your organization allows you to narrow down the things that you can focus on. Then the next step is to think about your business strategy. Where are the biggest gaps that you have? Now, on the left hand side are the key areas of the strategy cascade created by Roger Martin. And it's, where it's an assessment of where you want to be in the future in these areas. Where do you want to play? How do you want to win? And the reality of where you are today. And that will allow you to identify strategic gaps. And then the key is to look at your generative AI ideas, identify initiatives that align the way that value can be created and how it can close those strategic gaps that you have in your strategy. And then the third step is to look at your capabilities and skills around generative AI. We've identified these 5 areas on the skills and workforce development, leadership and culture, thinking about your processes and operational models, how agile and adaptable can they be, looking at your data and the governance models around them, and then also looking at technology stacks. And then having a really honest conversation with yourselves and saying, what is the status of those capabilities? If we have gaps in these areas, if it's not at least at that emerging or ideally at that established level of maturity, then you're going to have to do some foundational work early in your roadmap to make sure those capabilities and skills are there. And then that's what allows you to then create the roadmap. And that, again, it's a messy process. There's no easy way around it. You're gathering all of these things together. And then you're going in and saying, okay, we're going to have to do these things first, these things second, that'll allow us to do these things in Q3, Q4, for example. So laying that out, understanding how value is created, what your biggest gaps are, and also what your capabilities and skills are the important inputs into your roadmap. So I want to see if there are any questions or comments here. Okay, we have this one question from Leonardo. How can we know that one strategy is a good strategy and it's not just a plan with a lot of initiatives that can create real business value? Great question, Leonardo. I think the one key thing is this. You look at your plan and say, overall, how is it creating significant value to help me achieve my business goals? Can you articulate that strategy as a simple point, as a story? I love the use of stories to say, this is the journey we're on, this is what we're trying to achieve. And does everything in your strategy line up into supporting that strategic story of your business, So I think, again, all of these initiatives, if all you have are initiatives and you have to pull out a piece of paper to tell you what that strategy is, that's not a strategic plan. That's a list of initiatives. A strategic plan goes back to, let me just find the slide here. Let me just put this up. Answers these questions. What are our winning aspirations? Where are we going to play? How are we going to win? What are the capabilities we have? And how do we tell that we're actually making progress? So that's how you can tell whether you have a strategic plan. Can you answer those questions? Can you tell a story around how these all add up to help you win in the marketplace? So great question. I have another question here. What from Alex? Thank you so much for all you all for joining. Keep the questions coming. What role can generative AI play in identifying high cost risk factors early in process? And then how can Gen AI aid in reducing rework and associated work? Okay, this is a bit more tactical, but I do want to identify this. So generative AI, the use of it, I love doing this, Alex. I love taking my plan, throwing it into generative AI and say, help me identify all the places that I haven't thought about yet. Be the person who says, look, this plan, these are the holes in the plan. And so I find that very helpful. And then also in identifying what are the risk factors that I haven't thought about. What are the risks I have to go and mitigate? And again, you can do a lot of that work internally with people you have, with partners who may have lots of experience. But I do like saying to generative AI, like, this is my plan. What have I not thought of? Poke holes in this. Help me make it as robust as possible. Help me think around the corners that I haven't seen yet. And then the second question is, how do you reduce rework? And again, I constantly encourage you to use AI, any of these platforms, as a thought partner. And one tip I always have is that when you put in your whatever the thing that you're working with, I like to add this one sentence. Before you start, please ask me any clarifying questions you may have. I actually have it as a keyboard shortcuts because I use it so many times. And you'll be amazed by the questions that come back. And they will be questions that you can't just answer right off because they're deep, introspective questions that you may have not have thought about. So again, I encourage you to use those kinds of things. Let's see. Are you considering the AI ecosystem? Jay, I think what you are talking about here is thinking about all the competitive aspects, and I'll talk about how you actually take that into account in the quarterly review. Great question for that. And see, it's especially ecosystem and stakeholders are not transaction based. Yes, we will talk about that. All right, let me get back into the slides here, and I'll talk about the whole process of how you do this. So, towards the end of each quarter, what you're doing is doing a couple of things. First of all, to prepare. And these are things that I would encourage that you are tracking throughout the entire quarter. Again, these are just things that you're just constantly doing. But you're tracking, you're gathering progress reports, you're doing analytics to see how things are working. You're highlighting any deviations that may be happening against your plan, and you're just tracking throughout the entire quarter. Also, towards the end of the quarter, about 2, 3 weeks in advance, some people do it halfway through, but towards the end of it, you're getting feedback from your team members. What's working? What's not working? What are the biggest roadblocks that you're seeing? What are some best practices you're finding? What are the new opportunities that you're seeing? And then this is where, again, Jay was asking about how do you think about the ecosystem? What is the landscape? Doing a quick scan of the landscape and saying, what's changed in terms of technology that we should be taking into account? What are our competitors doing? And then also, what are any changes that we have to take into account with the regulatory landscape? So you're gathering all of this information together. And then you have a quarterly meeting with the key decision makers on your team. Now, some people call this the AI Council, some people call it the strategic planning team, whatever that group is. And I'll talk about it next week about how to organize for AI. But the key point at this meeting is that you're going through and recapping. Again, you're restating these are our strategic goals. This is our big overall plan for how we want to use generative AI to help us achieve our business objectives. And you're reviewing and saying, okay, remember everyone, this is what we're trying to achieve. And then the next thing you do is you have this progress review. You take all that information that you gathered before and you talk about the achievements. Where have we won? What are the great things that we've done? And what are the challenges that we face? What are the lessons we've learned? And then we're looking at the capabilities also, saying, are we where we need to be with our current capabilities? And we look at those gaps and say, what do we have to close? What are the new things that we've discovered and learned? And then you're talking about looking at all the current opportunities you have. So, what are our current priorities? And adding all the new opportunities that come in, you're saying, okay, how are we going to look at all the things that are on the table again? And this is the very important part. You're thinking about how to actually align everything for the next 5 quarters and then add the other 6 quarter on top of it. And then when you add the next quarter, you're then communicating the entire new 18-month, new 6 quarter walk to everybody that's involved. So I just want to take a moment here and just do a bit of a review because that is really hard to do, what I just talked about. This whole 6 quarter walk is this quarterly review meeting is not something that you're used to doing. And just the fact that this one important step, the strategic alignment around reviewing the current priorities and adding new opportunities, that is a very important step where you're saying, okay, here are all the things we want to accomplish. Now we have to choose. A strategic plan says we have only so many capabilities, so many resources, so much time. What do we want to prioritize? What are the things we're going to have to take off our list? And it's this key ability to be able to say no, that we're not going to do these things because they no longer align with what we want to do. And so I think this is a very important thing to do because it's so easy when everyone is at the table, all the different departments, all the different business units are saying, we want this, we want that, we want all of it. And the tendency says, okay, let's go do all of it. And everybody gets overburdened. You don't know what's important, and your strategic plan falls apart. So when I think about the most important elements of success are these things. First of all, that you're synchronized across departments. You're adjusting these new priorities. And then the key thing is that those new priorities and new opportunities have to be aligned with your strategic vision. If it's not aligning and supporting you in your pursuit of your strategic objectives, then it's not going to be considered. Now, the only caveat here is that if things change so radically that it impacts your overall strategic objectives, that the landscape has changed so radically over the past quarter that you have to change things significantly in terms of your strategic direction and your vision, then that's a different issue. But we find that that rarely happens. It may happen more incrementally and you're starting to shift things, but if things majorly happen, then all bets are off. You have to have a strategic alignment across the entire strategy plan itself. The third thing here is that you need to have leadership that is capable of being adaptive, that they can navigate this continuous change. And I've seen some leaders that just really have a hard time with this. They're used to having a plan. They execute that plan for the next year. They like to be locked and loaded. And this idea that the plans can change every quarter can be really hard for some leaders. And so give them a bit of grace, give them some support, provide them the scaffolding to say, this is the reality of what the landscape looks like. We need to develop the resilience and the capability to be able to change. And this is a very important thing that I was talking about before, the art of saying no. The art of focus is the art of saying no, because then you focus on what is the most important thing to help us achieve our strategic objectives. So, this disciplined prioritization is absolutely crucial. And that is the purpose of those review meetings every quarter. It's to make sure we're all completely aligned on what is very important to achieve our strategic vision. We're all aligned that these are the top priorities, these are not, and we're going to work on these. It's not going to be my pet project, the thing that moves my department along. It's about this alignment against what's the best thing for our organization. And that can be a very difficult thing for some organizations. It may not be culturally aligned with the way the organization works, about how decisions are being made. So these quarterly review meetings are instrumental in changing the way the organization thinks about transformational strategy and planning. And then finally, it's so important to have really clear metrics. And I like to say that the best metrics to have are the ones that align with your business strategy. So, how are you measuring your progress towards your business objectives? Use those same metrics to measure your process, again, your progress on your 6 quarter walk. So those are the major things that I wanted to talk about today. And this is just my closing slide. You all have the slides already, the links to it. Let me just go through. I just have a little bit of time left. I want to see if there are any other questions here. So Leonardo has another question. How does the ambidextrous organization strategy exemplify this approach? And what role does a cohesive 18-month planning play in success? The ambidextrous organization is, again, as I remember it, this is an organization that is very flexible, can do and hold a lot of different conflicting ideas and work in a very flexible way. It is absolutely crucial. Again, I find that organizations that have more agile and adaptive processes and also culture and leadership are the ones who are adopting generative AI very, very successfully because they can deal with the uncertainty. They can deal with the fact that things are constantly changing and that you're kind of figuring things out along the way. And the 18-month plan, again, gives you that longer time cycle to think about transformational change. And it also allows you to have these quarterly check-ins so you're not locked in to a static 18-month plan. Let's see. And what is the role of culture in this strategic planning process? Absolutely crucial. Culture and leadership have always been the biggest determining factors of whether a transformational plan is going to be successful. I've been doing transformational work with organizations for over 2 decades now. And the thing I see over and over and over again is that when they address leadership and culture up front and saying, these are the gaps that we have, these are the beliefs in our culture that hold us back from success. And while they're putting together all the sort of hard aspects of the strategy, these are the technologies, these are the skills, these are the processes we need to have. They're also working on the soft aspects of the strategy, which is how are we going to have to think, work, even feel differently as an organization? So, culture is absolutely crucial. And especially with generative AI, I find that thinking about how culture is going to change, how we do work around here is going to fundamentally change. So, you need to take that into account in your roadmap. All right. I am pretty much out of time. I want to go and just talk about what I'm going to be talking about next week. So, next week, we're talking about how to organize for AI. Who are the people you need to have on this team? How do you evolve the team? What governance structures you have to put in? How do you think about, again, just how do you organize across the organization to be able to execute on this roadmap? So, I hope you'll join me then. I'm just checking to see what else along here. Oh, one last question here. Mohammed, do you think emotional intelligence also plays an important role in this? Absolutely. Again, I think emotional intelligence has a tremendous role in effective leadership. And so we'll talk about that in just a few weeks about just the leadership and culture part of generative AI. Seems like there's a lot of interest in that. So that's planned and that's coming up in the next couple of weeks about how to think about culture, emotional intelligence, and all those other things. But join me next week to talk about how to organize for AI. That's going to be fun. We have some crazy ideas and examples to put into that too, as well. In the meantime, stay safe out there, enjoy experimenting with things, and hopefully by next week, this whole election thing will be behind us and we can move forward together and hopefully unify together as a country. All right, take care, everybody, and I'll see you very soon. Bye bye.